I swear I saw the prince's shadow move, but he wasn't standing there anymore. I still don't know if my eyes were playing tricks on me, but that night, in the dim torchlight of the royal courtyard, something was wrong. It started with a simple task, a simple delivery, something I had done countless times before. But this time, it felt like I was walking straight into a nightmare. I grew up in the palace. My family was poor, and I worked as a servant. My job was to help in the kitchens, deliver messages, clean the halls, and do whatever else was needed. It wasn't a great life, but it was better than most in the village. The palace was a place of wealth and power, and I felt lucky to be there, even if I was just a nobody in the grand scheme of things. The people in the village told stories about the royal family. We all knew the king was old, but not many knew the prince. Prince Gaboko was rarely seen outside the palace. He didn't join the feasts or public events like his father did. He kept to himself, locked away in his chambers. There were rumors, whispers that he was cursed, that he had made a deal with something dark, something from the deep forest beyond the kingdom. No one knew for sure, but there was one thing everyone agreed on. Prince Gaboko was not like other people. That night, I was chosen to deliver food to his chambers, a task I dreaded. Nobody liked going near him. The guards around his rooms were always tense, always alert, and I had seen enough to know they feared him. I wasn't the only one. No one liked to talk about him, but they all looked away when his name came up. Just take the food and don't ask questions, they'd tell me. I had learned not to ask. I grabbed the tray of food, my hands shaking slightly as I carried it through the dark hallways. The candles on the walls barely lit the way. The palace felt different at night, quiet, eerie, like it wasn't truly alive. I passed by rooms that were locked and covered in dust. The stone walls seemed to hold secrets, things no one was brave enough to say out loud. When I reached the prince's door, my heart skipped a beat. The guards were gone. That was strange. They were usually posted outside, watching the halls with their swords drawn. But tonight there was nothing but silence. I knocked gently. No response. I knocked harder, feeling a cold chill on the back of my neck. Still, no answer. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. I didn't want to leave, but I didn't want to go in either. But the thought of returning empty-handed, of angering the prince, was worse than anything else. So I pushed the door open just a little bit. The air inside was thick, almost suffocating, and smelled of something metallic, like iron. I looked around the room and saw him, Prince Gaboko. He was sitting by the window, his back to me. His face was obscured by shadows and he didn't move. "Your meal, my lord," I said, placing the tray on the table. My voice was barely more than a whisper. He didn't respond. I turned to leave, but something stopped me. I don't know why I did it, but I looked back at him. His reflection in the window caught my eye. For a moment, I thought I saw something that didn't belong. The figure in the glass wasn't quite right. It was wrong. The mouth was twisted into a grin, a wide, unnatural stretch, and the eyes, they weren't his. I stepped back, suddenly feeling lightheaded, like I had been hit by a wave of dizziness. I couldn't move. My heart pounded, and I had the distinct feeling I wasn't alone anymore. The reflection in the window twisted its head, but the prince didn't move. He was still sitting, his back to me. "Is something wrong?" His voice was too calm, too steady. I froze. How could he have known I was staring at the reflection? No, my lord," I stammered, my words barely escaping my throat. I kept my gaze on the floor. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. Something was pulling me, something dark in the room, something that made my skin crawl. I took another step back, but the reflection in the window kept moving. It didn't match the prince's body. It was pacing. The thing in the glass moved across the wall, like a shadow with a life of its own, and I could hear the soft sound of footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut in front of me. I gasped and reached for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic rose in my chest. The footsteps were getting closer, but I couldn't see anyone behind me. I pounded on the door, shouting for help, but the hall outside was silent, not a single sound. Then I heard him, Prince Gaboko's voice, low and smooth just behind me. "You should stay." I whipped around, but he wasn't there. The room was empty except for me and the twisted figure in the window. The thing in the glass smiled wider. It was closer now. I could feel its cold breath on my neck. I ran.
I don't know how, but I ran. I don't remember opening the door or running down the hall. All I know is that I found myself outside in the cold night air, gasping for breath, my heart racing. I looked up at the prince's window. That's when I saw it. The shadow on the wall moved again. It was like the dark itself was alive, crawling across the stone like a living thing. It moved as though it was following me, pacing back and forth, and it didn't stop. It stretched and shrank with every flicker of the torchlight, but it was always there, always watching. I felt the weight of its gaze, cold and unblinking. The next morning, the king was dead. They said it was natural, that he had simply passed away in his sleep. But the bruise marks on his neck said otherwise. They were too dark, too deep. The servants whispered that he had been strangled, but no one dared to say it out loud. Prince Gboko was crowned king that very afternoon, his cold eyes sweeping over the gathered court, a smile stretching across his lips. He didn't look sad. He didn't look upset. He looked pleased. Over the next few days, people started to disappear. Servants, villagers, even the guards. No one knew where they went, but the palace became quieter. No one dared ask questions. Not after what had happened to the king. I tried to tell the others, tried to explain what I had seen, but they wouldn't listen. They couldn't. They were too afraid of what had become of the prince. The things he had done, the deals he had made. And sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I can still see that shadow. It follows me, just out of the corner of my eye, moving in the dark. I hear its footsteps, slow and heavy, and I feel the cold breath on my neck. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. I just know one thing. Prince Gboko didn't make a deal with something in the forest. He became something, and now it's coming for us all.